Good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining me on the planet. My name is June Allen, and I am the founder of The Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. So good morning again, everybody. I hope you're okay. Hope you're having a good week. So today is day 19 of the 30 live streams in 30 days challenge. So today I'm going to be sharing. I've had emails about people asking me about business stuff and all of that. So I'm going to do a few sessions on about my business from a business perspective. So today I want to talk specifically about the challenges of being a therapist. Okay, some of the challenges that I have to deal with, that I deal with, and yeah, just being a black therapist, what that means, how I deal with it, all of that kind of stuff. So actually, just before I get into that, I just need to say as well that today is the last day to get early bird tickets for my retreat, The Art of Receiving, on Saturday the 15th of July, 10 till 2 in Brixton. Okay, it's in person. So click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. So let's get into it. So somebody asked me, do I get imposter syndrome? Okay, that's the first question. Do I get imposter syndrome? So I have a bit of a I suppose it's a bee in my bonnet, okay, with even the term imposter syndrome, because I think that imposter syndrome, the reason why I don't like the term imposter syndrome is because it doesn't actually include the cultural context. For me, imposter syndrome doesn't exist when it comes to black people, because I think that imposter syndrome is actually internalized racism. Imposter syndrome, we talk about feeling fake, we don't feel confident. I mean, if I actually let me Google the definition, okay, and then I can really break it down for you. Okay, hang on, let me just give me a second, because I see a lot of people using the term, and no disrespect to anyone that's using the term, but here we go. So it says imposter syndrome is loosely defined as doubting your abilities and feeling like a fraud. It disproportionately affects high achieving people who find it difficult to accept their accomplishments. Many question whether they're deserving of accolades. Okay, so somebody's even written an article on stop telling women that they have imposter syndrome. Anyway, I'll read that later. But the reason, so just going by that, it's about feeling like a fraud. If you listen to any of my live streams that I've done previously, I talk a lot about how women struggle to receive and all the rest of it because of their feelings of unworthiness and all of that. And a lot of that is because we've internalized the lies that we feel about ourselves as black people. Racism tells us that we're not good enough, that we're unworthy, that we're not pretty enough, that we're not smart enough, that we're lazy, that we're this, that we're that. There are so many different things that systems of oppression tell us. Okay, they dictate to us, and over time, okay, hi Michelle, thanks for joining. Over time, we internalize those things. So you can't talk about quote unquote imposter syndrome unless you're also, when it comes to us, okay, when it comes to white women and stuff, like white people, it applies to them. But when it comes to us, you can't have conversations about imposter syndrome without actually talking about the oppression, the internalized oppression that we experience as a result of living underneath this system. I hope that kind of makes a bit more sense. So when you think about imposter syndrome and you think about, not being able to receive accolades and stuff like that, like it said in the definition, again, it goes back to what I did a live stream on this a few days ago about black women finding it hard to receive, or black people finding it hard to receive, and it's because of what we've internalized. It's also a product of not being raised in an environment as children where receiving was okay, where you're allowed to receive, where you're allowed to ask for your needs to get met, all of that kind of stuff. And under the system, we're not allowed to have needs either. We're not allowed to have needs. We're not allowed to talk about our pain. We're not allowed to talk about our desires. We're not allowed to have anything. We're just supposed to be mules under the system. So it makes sense then that so-called imposter syndrome us feeling like we're not worthy, us feeling like we're not good enough, us feeling like we shouldn't receive accolades or anything for what we've achieved. What that is for us is internalized oppression. It's internalized oppression. Okay, so think about that. Next time you hear the person talk about imposter syndrome, don't just think about it on face value, in the sense that, oh, it's just because I don't feel good about myself, or it's because I don't feel worthy, or whatever. Think about it within the context of race and oppression as well. Think about it in terms of, what have you internalized from the system? What have you internalized from oppression, in the sense of being a woman, in terms of being black? Think about all of those things, because when you look up, there was nothing in that definition that talked about oppression. There was nothing in that definition that talked about race and oppression. Okay, so that tells you something. If you're a black person or a person of color, and you're not asking yourself that question about how does race fit into this conversation, okay, then you need to be including that in the whether the person has asked you that or not. That should always be your default. How does race play a role in this situation? Because at some level, it will play a role in it. Okay, so when people tell you that you've got imposter syndrome, or you're dealing with it, or whatever, you need to think about, is this person really speaking to me? Is this person really speaking to me? Or am I in a situation where this person doesn't really want me to talk about the impact of race on my self-esteem, on how I feel about myself, in my inability to receive? Okay, that needs to be included in the conversation. And the minute you start to include that stuff in the conversation is when you'll start to get different answers. Okay, you'll start to get in different answers. The term imposter syndrome is very limited. It's very limited, and it doesn't include us. It often doesn't include our experience. It doesn't include the black experience. Okay, so be very careful when you're using that term. Okay, be very careful when you're using that term, especially when you're talking to black people, because it's only gonna tell them so much about their experience. You need to include the conversation about race. Okay, so that's my rant about imposter syndrome. Okay, so that's that one. So okay, so what else is really difficult about being a therapist? Okay, so I'm a racial trauma therapist, so I deal with a lot of clients who have a lot of issues, who have a lot of trauma. As a community, we have a lot of trauma. So the difficulty in being a therapist and having to deal with trauma is that I have to manage that, the fact that I'm holding space for people with trauma, because people often offload their trauma. Okay, they offload their trauma. There's a lot of sadness. Sometimes there's a lot of anger. Sometimes there's a lot of upset. There's a lot of grief. And for me to be able to hold space for those clients, the challenging thing for me is that I have to make sure that I have my stuff in place. I have to be doing my own work to make sure that I can continue to hold that space. Okay, so that means having great supervision so that I can go and get the support that I need, okay, from somebody who's professional and who can hold space for me, when I can go to them and say, so let me tell you what supervision is. Actually, supervision, obviously, if you're a therapy student, you're going to know what this is. You're going to know what supervision is. But for those of you that don't know, it's a space. It's almost like it's a professional therapist who I go to, and I explore the relationship with myself and my clients. Okay, so if a client comes to me and with a lot of trauma or whatever, and they're unpacking or whatever, I can go to my supervisor, because sometimes when clients talk to me about their trauma, it can sometimes trigger my own trauma. So what I do with my supervisor is that I can then unpack with the supervisor the relationship between me and my clients, so that it makes sure that my stuff is not getting mixed up with the client's stuff. The supervisor will help me to unpack the stuff that I need to deal with in therapy and the stuff that I need to deal with the client. Okay, so sometimes because of my own experience, that stuff can sometimes get blurred. I'm quite often aware of it at the time. So obviously the client's not going to know any of that. but I can tell when I know when my stuff is getting triggered when the client's talking to me. So what I do when I'm working with a client is I know I've got the skill now. I know how to park it. I go, okay, I understand now that my stuff is, this part of my stuff is getting triggered, so I park it. Okay, I park it so that I'm going to take that to supervision, or I know that I need to take that bit to therapy. Okay, so the supervisor is really going to help me do that. So, you know, being a trauma therapist is hard work. Being a trauma therapist is hard work because I'm dealing with a lot of people's issues. And when I tell you some of the stories that I hear people tell me, I mean, honestly, it beggars belief that people behave the way that they behave. But that just tells me that there's a lot of pain in our family. There's a lot of pain in our community. There's a lot of pain in our community that needs to be dealt with. But there's also a part of me, although there's a part of me that, I can get angry for my clients. I get upset when I hear their story. Obviously, I don't do all this in session because I need to be able to hold the space for them. But it doesn't mean I don't get upset. It doesn't mean I don't find it difficult to hear their stories. And that is really, really hard. And sometimes I feel like I want to go and cuss out the relatives. I feel like I want to go and cuss out the relatives, because 9 times out of 10, people come to me with their trauma, and it's, the trauma is often because they've been harmed by other family members. They've been harmed by people that were supposed to look after them. So it's quite often their parents or brothers, uncles, people that have taken advantage of them, crossed boundaries, abused them. In every way you can think of, they've been abused. And that stuff is hard to hear. It's hard to hear, but I also see it as a privilege as well to be able to sit and hold space for those people, because a lot of times, people have come and told me stuff in therapy and that they haven't told anybody else. So these people have been holding this stuff for decades. They've been holding this stuff for decades because they've been too afraid to share it. Sometimes there's a lot of shame that comes with it. They've shared things that it's been so difficult for them to unload because they just feel so ashamed, especially when it's things like SA and stuff like that. It's very difficult stuff for people to share. But again, I'm so compassionate, and I always advocate for my clients. I really advocate for them, especially when it's inner child and stuff like that. I really advocate for them. So even though it's difficult for me to hear their stories, and it can be difficult, it's also very humbling. It's very humbling for me to hear their stories, and it's a privilege for me to hold space for people and allow them to unpack and unload all of the things that have been keeping them in bondage, from all of the suffering and all of that. So yeah, the trauma work is hard. So that's the challenge of one of the challenges of being a therapist, is that I really do have to take care of myself. I really do have to take care of myself, because I don't want to be one of these therapists that kind of doesn't take care of myself and then I end up burnt out. Because that happens to a lot of therapists. They end up being burnt out because they're sitting with clients and stuff like that, and then they're listening to a lot of trauma, but they're not taking care of themselves. They're not taking enough breaks. I'll be fully transparent. Sometimes I hear therapists talking about, I've got 20 clients that I do a week, and all. Like, I can't do that. I don't have capacity to do 20, 30, 40 clients a week, and I hear people talking about that. And this is one of the reasons why I'm more expensive than other therapists, because I would rather have less clients. Okay, I'd rather have less clients and be fully present. Be fully present to those clients. Okay, not saying that people that do 20, 30, 40 clients are not present, but for me, I can't see how you can be that present or really show up for you. There's going to be a fallout at some level. If you're working with all those clients, you got to be doing some serious supervision. You got to be doing some serious supervision to be working with all of those clients, and especially if it's trauma work. Because this is the thing about doing trauma work. If you're working with all of those clients and they're just kind of, you're just kind of doing more kind of how can I put this? Not that I'm comparing pain with pain, because people are in pain for different reasons, but there's very different work when you're doing, say, trauma work, deep trauma work, when you're talking about extreme abuse and all of that kind of stuff, really complex clients, than when you're dealing with somebody that's, you know, coming in because they're, you know, I don't know, they're having arguments with their partner or whatever. It's a different type of energy, and I'm not saying one is better than the other, but it's a different type of work, you know. Hi, thanks for joining. It's a different type of work, it's a different type of energy that you're working with, and for me, trauma work, it you know, it's a lot more taxing. It's a lot more taxing on the spirit. It's a lot more taxing energetically. You know, it can be really tiring. So, you know, I'd rather work with, I choose to work with a lot less clients in numbers. Okay, so the clients that I do work with, I know that I can show up and be fully present to those clients. So, you know, if you're a therapy student training to become a therapist, these are all things that you need to think about, because it will take its toll on you if you're not really if you're not taking care of yourself. And taking care of yourself as a therapist is expensive. You know, supervision is not cheap. You need to have that. Sometimes people have it, you know, depending on how many clients you've got. You need to take into consideration how much supervision you need, and then actually just taking time out. Having proper holidays and all of that kind of stuff is really, really important. Making sure that you get days off as well, so that you can allow your brain and stuff to wind down. Because sometimes, if I've got a lot of stuff going on, or if I'm doing a lot of heavy trauma work, you know, it can increase my anxiety. It can make it difficult for me to relax after, you know, when I'm not working with clients and stuff like that. It can be very difficult. So again, this is why the self-care part of it is really important, and people don't always talk about that. You know, people say, you know, don't understand why therapy is so expensive. You know, for clients, why therapy is so expensive for clients. And as a trauma therapist, these are the reasons why it's expensive. Because I'm not going to, in order for me to show up, you know, I'm not going to be that therapist who's doing 30, 40 clients a week. Because I want to be able to show up for my clients in a different way, so that I'm fully present, so that I know, you know, I can understand, and I can hold the space for them. And I can be compassionate and all of that stuff. Not that I'm not good, you know. Anyway, it's this is for me. Okay, let me speak for myself, because it might not be for everybody, but for me, and I don't want to burn out. I have to think about my private practice within the context of the long term. Okay, I know if I allowed myself to have loads of clients in that sense, you know, doing 30, 40 clients, I know I'm going to burn out. Because I'm an empath. Okay, I know I'm going to burn out. So I choose not to have all of that stuff, and this is the reason why I do other stuff as part of my private practice. I've got the membership. Okay, I've got the online membership that I do, the monthly membership. I work with corporate companies as well. I work with them around racial wellness. I work with corporate companies around working with their people of colour staff, giving them racial wellness tools and all that sort of stuff. I do corporate work. You know, I also do speaking. That's why I do the retreats and stuff like that as well, because it kind of breaks up what I'm doing, and it's different energy, it's different ways of making money. Like going forward, you know, I am going to eventually do retreats where people can stay over. You know, in 2019, I did an amazing retreat in Ghana. You know, and that was absolutely like, it was just gorgeous doing that. So it's about diversifying the services that I have, because I was never, you know, when I initially trained to become a therapist, I never wanted to just be in private practice. I wanted it to be an empire where I could do different things in terms of wellness and offer different services for people. So, you know, people can come and work with me one-on-one. If they don't want to work with me one-on-one, I can go and do group work. They can work with me in the membership. If they don't want to do that and they want to just come to a workshop and learn about specific things, people can come and do that. If they want to come and, there's so many different ways to diversify the private practice. You know, and I really, really wanted to do that, and so that's another one of the reasons, because it kind of breaks up the heaviness of doing the trauma work. Okay, that's how I kind of get round it. So it's important to think about that stuff. Actually, if something that I actually did yesterday is I actually created if you're interested, if you were thinking about working in private practice and you don't know where to start, you're thinking about becoming a therapist, and you would like some support, okay, you'd like some business coaching and stuff like that around your around setting up in private practice, I'm actually considering creating a service to actually do that. So if you're interested in that, well I really dive deep and maybe create some classes and stuff like that, where you can work with me over a period of time to set up your private practice, to get support around your private practice. What does it mean for you as a black therapist who's, you know, freshly qualified, or maybe you've been in business for a while and you need to just basically refresh your you know, how you operate. Maybe you want support around marketing, maybe you want support around how to diversify your practice. You know, maybe you've been doing private practice for a while and you want to learn how to do retreats or whatever it is. If you're interested in doing all those things and you want to work with me around how to do those things, if you click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. Right there, you can click on a link there and you can register your interest. If enough people want me to do it, okay, I am more than happy to create a space for student, you know, people of colour therapists that have just recently qualified or want to kind of refresh their business and have a look at their business. Then I will create that space and I'll do that. So you know, I know Michelle, I can see you in the I saw you joined earlier. If you're still watching, this is actually created with you in mind, because I know you've asked me a few times about different things. So click the link in my bio, register your interest, and then if enough people are interested in me doing it, then I'll definitely be up for doing that. So yeah, gosh, what else can I tell you about the challenges of being a therapist? Let's talk about money trauma. Okay, so here's the thing. You need to really listen to this one. Okay, so somebody's saying about, would you be thinking about doing your retreat back again in Ghana? Oh my gosh, yes, I would. I am thinking about doing it again in Ghana, because I think that people want it. And the lady that I did the retreat with before in Ghana, she's also a therapist, amazing woman. We have had conversations. We have had other conversations about thinking about doing it again. It was before COVID. Obviously, we were going to keep doing it as an annual thing, but then COVID hit and we had to stop. So, if you're not already on my email list, you know, click the link in my bio and join my email list. Yeah, I will let you know about that. But I mean, I think that is something that I will do. So let me get back to the money trauma conversation. So, if you have experienced money trauma, if you're a black person, there's probably 9 times out of 10 you've got money trauma in your history at some level, whether it's on the plantations or whether it's in your family of origin or whatever. If you have got money trauma, okay, it is going to show up in your business if you don't deal with it. Okay? Point blank period. If you've got money trauma in your history, it is going to show up in your business if you are not doing your money work. So something that I have money trauma in my history. My parents are from Jamaica. Okay, so I've got 240 years of enslavement on the plantations in Jamaica. Okay, so there's money trauma. Okay, when we talk about it from that perspective, there's also some money trauma that happened in my family, poverty trauma, all of that. You know, all of that stuff is all relevant. Okay, and it's important not to sit in the fantasy of what it means to be in private practice. Okay, there are lots of nice things that you can, as a therapist, that are really good, and I'll talk about the good things about being a therapist. I'll talk about that tomorrow. But the whole thing about money trauma is that you really, not just money, actually, any issues that you've had in your family. If you've got trauma in your family, period. It's gonna show up. It's gonna show up in your business. It's gonna show up in your business. So if you've got money trauma, it's gonna. If you've got issues around money in terms of, let me give you some examples. If you've got issues like overspending, okay, or you know you're kind of afraid of your relationship to money. Think about what your relationship to money is like at the moment. Okay, think about your relationship to money at the moment. Do you resent money? Do you find it hard to look at money? Are you scared to open your mail? Are you do you look at your bank account? Do you have a spending plan? Do you understand about do you resent having to pay bills? Do you there's so many different things I could talk about in terms of money trauma. Okay, there were so many things I could talk about in terms of money trauma. But if you've got any of those issues, okay, overspending, underspending, you giving away your time for free with no clear benefit, and if you go back through some of these live streams, I do go more in depth on stuff like that. Okay, if you've got any of those issues going on, it's going to show up in your business. It's going to show up in your business. Okay, so you need to be doing the work. You've got to be doing your own inner work. Okay, an important part of my work that I've done is going through my money trauma and still working through it. It's not it's all resolved and everything's all hunky-dory. No, it's still something that I'm working through daily. It's still something that I'm working through daily, working through the money stuff. And that stuff is non-negotiable. It's non-negotiable. Okay, and this is something that I will, if you decide that you want to work with me, okay, as a student or whatever, these are all things that I will also talk about. These are all things that I will also talk about, that I would do classes on, because people need to understand. People talk about PTSD and all of that kind of stuff when it comes to relationships, okay, but this can also show up in your business. Okay, I've had situations, like collaborations and stuff that haven't worked out, okay, that have actually triggered my PTSD from my family. Okay, so I've had to work in therapy and really taking care of myself and understanding that actually that's telling me that there's some stuff going on there's stuff going on in my family trauma, okay, that is still quite live, that's still there. So I need to deal with that in therapy. So the piece around my family that's still live, the PTSD stuff, I need to take that to therapy. The piece that came up around the collaboration, I need to take that to supervision. I can take that bit to supervision. Okay, or my business coach. I've also got a business coach as well. I can take that to my business coach. So there's so many different things that come up, but it's understanding that, how you show up in your business, how you show up with your clients and stuff like that, it's not separate from the trauma that you had in your family and all of that kind of stuff. Sometimes that stuff they will dance around each other. Sometimes there was stuff that will go parallel. Sometimes it will get enmeshed. Okay, and as a therapist, it's your responsibility to your clients to make sure that you're doing your own work. There are therapists out here that don't do enough of their own work. One of the reasons that I'm good at what I do is because I was in recovery for, gosh, how long was I in recovery? I was in recovery for years before I even went into before I even started training as a therapist. I was already sponsoring people in recovery before I started training as a therapist. I was already reading untold books before I started training as a therapist. So that meant that by the time I started training as a therapist, I already had a real deep sense of awareness. I already had a lot of self-awareness. And that's what's gonna make you. That's the difference between a therapist and a great therapist and an outstanding therapist. Okay, is doing your own work, because you can only take your clients as far as the work that you've done. You can only take your clients as far as the work that you've done. So if you haven't done a lot of your own personal work, if you haven't done a lot of your own personal work, or not continuing to do your own personal work, then you can only take your clients so far. You can only take your clients so far. Okay, so you really, really do need to be doing your own work. It's non-negotiable. Okay, it's absolutely non-negotiable. But what happens when you do your own work is that it just makes you a better therapist. It just makes you a better therapist. And the thing is as well, here's the thing. Here's another challenge, okay? A lot of the trainings that I've done, okay, when I did my initial foundation training and all of that kind of stuff to get my certificate, to get my integrative certificate, a lot of them don't really go in depth around the intercultural stuff, around the race stuff. I went to Lambeth. I chose to go to Lambeth College because I was thinking, where's the blackest place I could go, where I can do this work? Because I went to another place. I went to another place to do my foundation, and I was the only black woman on my course. I was the only black woman on the foundation course, and I thought, I ain't doing this again. All the tutors were white. There was one other person of colour in my class, but I couldn't talk to her about race at that time because she was so traumatized by her own racial experience that she just wasn't She just wasn't there yet. You know, it's quite funny because she understands it now. Yeah. Anyway, that's another conversation. But yeah, I just, you know, so I chose to go to Lambeth because I just thought I need to, you know, and I live in North London, so I was willing to travel to South London to do this, to go somewhere where there's going to be more black people, and that actually was really helpful because what happened was, in half the class, okay, was non-white. There was quite a few black people in the class, which was good, and you know, I had black tutors. You know, obviously they've still got the curriculum that they need to teach and stuff like that. So it wasn't like, you know, the conversations were particularly blacker in that sense, but the conversation was much richer. And there was a lot more diversity in the conversations. And, you know, because I was there, I just brought up conversations. I just thought, I don't care. So I just brought up stuff. And even the white people that were in the group, they even said to me, not just me personally, but to the group, that they know that they had a much richer experience, had a much more diverse experience, okay, because they came to Lambeth, because there were so much more people in terms of men, in terms of sexuality, in terms of race. There was a much diverse class, and so the conversations were much richer. So that's something that you need to think about, you know. But even with all of that, one of the reasons why, you know, I'm so knowledgeable, and because I'm good at what I do, is because I was willing to spend extra money outside of that training, on top of that training, to do more work, so that I can understand things even deeper, particularly when it comes to my community. I did some trauma training after I finished my you know, the main course that I had to finish to get my foundational stuff. Even after that, I did this trauma training. It was 4 sessions, okay, and they didn't really talk about racial trauma. Racial trauma, and that you know, it was very general, but they didn't really talk about racial trauma. So I thought it was ironic. I mean, obviously, me being me, I applied everything that they said in my head. You know, when I'm working with clients, I apply that with a cultural context. But if I was a black person, you know, if I was a black person who wasn't really culturally aware or anything like that, you know, they wouldn't have any understanding about racial trauma, because they didn't teach it, even though it was a trauma course. But it was run by two white women. I mean, I learned a lot from the course, but, you know, and I didn't feed it back to them about that. I didn't feed it back to them, because I just thought, you know what, I'll do the frigging thing myself. I will teach it. So, like I've done in the past, okay, I'm not gonna expect, and even if they did go and teach it, okay, it's not going to be the same. Because they don't have the personal experience. I know that that's something for me to do. I feel like as a black therapist, it's something that I can deliver to my community and to student therapists. So it's something else that's kind of on my bucket list to do, you know. But these are the challenges about being a black therapist. But this is the reason why I'm now working with Reshma. Okay, I'm now working with Reshma Mencken, the brother who wrote My Grandmother's Hands, which is specifically more about racial trauma. He teaches the term, or the methodology is somatic abolitionism. Okay, somatic abolitionism, which is you know, body psychology. Okay, but he talks more about the black body. He really gets into the black body, and it's really focused on race. I'm in the middle of it. I'm doing a 9-month process with Reshma at the moment, and I absolutely love it. I love working with him. I'm really excited because I'm actually going to be seeing him. He's coming to London next month, and I'm going to go and see him, and I'm really looking forward to it. So these are the challenges as a black therapist. Okay, you need to, you know, you have to spend, on top of all the money that I've already spent training and all the rest of it, I have to spend more money again to train, to be specific and niche down, to make sure that I'm serving my people the way that they need to be served. Again, this is the reason why I'm more expensive than other therapists, and I make no apologies for it, because I know that I've spent thousands of pounds doing all of this extra training and this extra work to make sure that I can deliver what I need to deliver. So that's why I make no apologies for not being the cheapest therapist. I know I'm not the cheapest therapist, but I'm doing the work. I'm doing the work, and I'm being specific. And anybody that's been following me, that knows how I work, that knows my values and all of that, they know what I'm about. You know what I'm about. So, you know, these are the challenges about being a therapist, because I never really wanted to be one of those therapists that just does everything. You know, I didn't want to be I'm not a cookie cutter therapist, and that's not for everybody, and that's okay. I'm not for everybody. But I feel, you know, I would love to see more black therapists really niching down and getting. There needs to be more of us out here doing this work. There needs to be more of us out here doing this work, you know, because our community needs it. Our community needs it, and I can't do all this stuff on my own, you know. So this is why I'm really keen to, you know, set up a business school so that I can help other black therapist service providers. Even maybe I might even do it. I'll see what happens, but I think I need to do some specific for student therapists, but also maybe for people just in black businesses, you know, because a lot of this does apply to black businesses, not necessarily therapists. You know, it can apply to a lot of black businesses, but then I do, you know, that's what the business coaching is for. But look, if I'm saying stuff to you and this is making sense, okay, and you're interested in working with me, click the link in my bio, okay, and register your interest for the Black Business School that I'm thinking about setting up. If there's enough people that are interested, I'm more than happy to make it happen. You know, if there's enough people, I think I'm in a WhatsApp group actually for black student therapists. I should probably put it in there, put this link in there actually as well. If you know any other student therapists that might be interested, okay, please tag them, share this with them, okay. What else can I share with you? The last thing that I'll share really, really quickly is the challenges. Yeah, it takes longer to build trust with clients. Okay, for me, it takes long. And I think I did share about this before. It takes longer to build trust with clients. Okay, because we have a history of being betrayed. Okay, black people have a history of being betrayed, so it's important to be able to show up and you have to be patient. You have to be patient, and you have to show up. You have to show up in a different way. If you're as a black business wanting to work with other black people, okay, I always have to have in the bottom of my mind that I'm dealing with a traumatized community. And you know, I'm not all about, you know, microwave selling. Or microwave, you know, it doesn't work like that. People go, oh yeah, you just want to get. It don't work like that. For us as a community, it don't work like that. If you want some get quick rich thing or trying to, you know, I don't do microwave therapy. Okay, I don't do microwave therapy because it doesn't. It's not going to have long-term effects. It's not going to have the long-term impact that's needed for change to really happen. Even when I do coaching and stuff like that, this is me personally. Okay, here's the difference between coaching and therapy. Let me just say this. The difference between coaching and therapy is this. When you're doing about coaching, okay, it's about you're focusing on the present and what you need to do to move forward. Okay, coaching is what you're doing in the present and moving forward. Okay, therapy is more about looking at your past and how it's showing up in the present. Okay, what happened in the past and how it's showing up in the present. Yeah. Now, my issue with sometimes with coaching is that coaching can be focused on the present and moving forward, not understanding that there's a traumatic history that's still impacting the present. So my thing that I always say to clients is, if they want coaching and stuff like that, is there needs to be some sort of work that involves looking at the history, especially for us as a people, because we have a history of severe trauma. Okay, so there has to be some sort of, because sometimes people will say, "Oh, let's do coaching, let's do coaching, let's do coaching," but really, sometimes what I sometimes think that is their avoidance of wanting to do the work that's involved in looking at their history. That might tell me that they're afraid to look at their history. They're afraid to look at their past. Okay, they're afraid to look at their past, and these are the conversations that I quite often need to have with clients. And maybe that sometimes might mean that those clients are not in alignment. Maybe those clients are not right for me. Okay? Because I can't see how you can do coaching and not look at your history. Because your history is going to show up in the present. That's the way it works. Okay? It's not about digging up everything and trying to re-traumatize clients. That's not what I'm saying. But you need to use your history as a reference point. It's like a library. Yeah, it's like an emotional library where you go, okay, this happened to me. You know, when you look at the timeline, okay, this happened to me when I was 6, this happened to me when I was 10, I had a bereavement when I was 11, you know, parents left and did this. Once you have that timeline of understanding, yeah, then you can use it as a reference point. So when people behave they might have certain behaviors in the present. Maybe let's take relationships as an example. It might be that, you know, you find it difficult to be in relationship. Maybe you're an avoidant around relationships. You find it difficult to go anywhere near relationships. Maybe it's been, I don't know, 10, 15 years since you've been in a relationship. Okay, so the reference point is, what I would want to explore as a therapist is, has that person, what's the abandonment history? There's going to be some sort of abandonment history or some sort of abuse history. Because that part of you that is trying to protect you from being in relationship, there's a reason that part of you is trying to protect you from being in relationship. It's not a negative thing. It's about understanding the internal ecosystem of parts that's inside that person's psyche, and understanding what that part is trying to tell the person. That part is trying to tell the person, don't be in a relationship. It's been 10 years, but you've been safe. Okay, so don't be in a relationship, because remember when dad left you when you were 3. Remember when that person abused you when you were 5. Remember when your mum did this to you when you were 7. All of those things in your history are reference points to help you understand that in the present you can't be in relationships because of what happened to you in your past. And a lot of people don't always make that connection because they're afraid of feeling the feelings. Okay, maybe there's a lot of shame, maybe there's a lot of rage, maybe there's a lot of whatever. The abandonment, the group, maybe people don't want to feel the grief, because that stuff it's intense. That's intense work. But unless you're able to look and make the reference point of those things that happened in your past, the stuff that's going on in your present is going to continue. It's going to leak out. The past is going to leak out in the present. That's not up for discussion. It's going to leak out. Whether you realise it or not, consciously or unconsciously, it's going to leak out. And it will also show up in your business as well. Your avoidance of people, your avoidance of intimacy in your relationships in the present will also show up in your business as not being able to, avoiding relationships as with your clients. There can be an avoidance of the relationship with your clients. There can be avoidance of relationships with working with other people, with doing collaborations. It's going to leak out. It's going to leak out. The intimacy that you should have experienced, the closeness, the relational intimacy that you experienced when you were young, okay, or lack of it, or the abuse of it, the deprivation of it as a child when you were growing up, that is going to show up as you depriving yourself as an adult, in your business, in your relationship. That stuff is going to bleed out. Okay, so what was I talking about? So I was talking about the difference between therapy and coaching. So these are all things that you need to think about. Okay, and when you're building trust with clients, and also building trust with yourself. You got to understand yourself. And again, this goes back to what I was saying before about you got to do your own work as a therapist. I would say that's probably one of the most crucial things that you need to do as a therapist. You've got to be doing your own work. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And a lot of people think that they can just get away with having a really good product. Okay, I've got this really good product. I've got this, this shea butter is really nice, blah, 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 or I've got this service, what they're selling. If you're not doing your own work, it's going to be difficult for you to show up, because people don't buy products, they buy relationships. Okay, they buy relationships. So the difference between you being able to sell your shea bar to somebody else and not go to you and not go to a competitor is, does that person have a relationship with you? And I'm not talking about them coming to your house and sitting down and drinking tea. I'm not saying that, but I'm talking about, does that, like, you're on these live streams every day for the 30 days. We have a relationship. Yeah, we have a relationship, because I understand that in order to build trust, you have to get to know me and I have to get to know you. I have to understand what keeps you up at night. You have to understand if what I'm offering is something that you feel comfortable with, because being vulnerable and doing trauma work is not something, you're not just going to pick anyone to go and sit down and do trauma work. No, you're not going to do it. Especially if you have a history of trauma within your family. You're not going to come and sit down with any random black person and start spilling out all your trauma. You ain't going to do it. So it takes patience, it takes trust in order to do that. And so as a therapist, it can be a challenge sometimes, because obviously, I have to be patient. I have to keep showing up. I have to keep showing up and allow the process to kind of take its time. Because not only is that person, I have to be aware that not only is that person working with me through their trauma, I also have to be aware as a black therapist how just me being a black female therapist is going to impact how they feel about me, how they do the process. It might be that I might remind them of somebody. It might be that, because obviously, and this is all unconscious stuff. Okay, that because I'm a black therapist, it might trigger stuff around their mum. This is why me doing these live streams and me showing up the way that I show up is so important. So someone's saying you're keeping me up at night. This time difference. Oh, that's so funny. All right, I'm gonna have to leave it there for today, because I've got my daughter's waiting to get to school and I want to spend some time with her before she goes to school. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. If you need to, if you want to register for the business school, register your interest, please go to heal.juneallen.net, heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. If you haven't got your ticket already for the workshop on the 15th of July, today is the last day, okay, to get your early bird, okay, £25 versus £30. So you need to get it today if you haven't done already. For those of you that already got your tickets, amazing. I'm really looking forward to seeing you and hanging out. Michelle, I look forward to seeing you on that Saturday so we can hang out. I know we've hung out and stuff before, so I'm really looking forward to that. Family, I will see you tomorrow when I'll talk about the benefits of therapy, of being a therapist. All right, so hopefully I'll see you then. All right, take care everyone, take care, bye bye.